Hola, cage fighting connoisseurs. This is KidNativeBloodyElbow.com, joined by Zane Simon for the one, the only, the late night, the dim lighting, the sixth round of Miller versus Cerrone UFC Fight Night in review. Zane, heck of a card. I'm told this is like what something the tied for third most knockouts in UFC history. Although it's like, what card was better than this for knockouts? Like I'm looking at this, it's like one, two, three, four, five, six, seven, eight knockouts on this card. This is an incredibly good night for the UFC. What did you think?
Oh, it was fantastic. I mean, it was a fun card on paper going into it. We didn't really have any complaints and a lot of exciting fights, and it delivered all the way through. I mean, even the two lone decisions were good, solid fights. So no complaints whatsoever. And yeah, I mean, even if there's been a card with more knockouts, I can't imagine there's been a card with this consistently high quality ones.
Yeah, it was excellent. And first off, let's get our thoughts on the headliner. I mean, it was like you guys tried to tell me before the fight that Jim Miller really didn't have any path to victory there. He tried to do what he needed to do, which was to seize the advantage, seize the initiative in round one. He did. I thought he won round one, but he edged it out, and he
Yeah.
was eating body shots, and it was clear Cerrone was coming, and that the momentum was building. And then there was the weirdness with the kick to the body that staggered Miller that briefly seemed to be a nut shot, and so the referee called a pause, but then said it wasn't, and then so, but fortunately Cerrone rectified that with a head kick knockout, just brutal violence, everything you want to see in a fight, really. I mean, he even had a momentum swing. I mean, it
Yeah.
pretty much had it all.
Yeah, I mean, there's nothing more I want out of a fight, and the referee thing, I chalk that up to the training where, I mean, as weird as it is from a spectator standpoint, they really are told that most of the rules are really like up to their discretion in the cage, especially when it comes to things like time and getting a doctor in or somebody's injured or like what do you do about that kind of like potentially fight ending business. So I'm happy enough with the fact that just took the time to actually look at it on the big screen and say, oh, that's not a groin kick, keep going. I mean, that's better because so often refs end up having to default to what the fighter tells them happened
Yeah,
in
and
the
it's
middle.
not clear that Miller was even declaring it a groin kick. I
No,
think he was pretty preoccupied with
but his body
doubling everything.
language said
Yeah,
groin kick. I mean,
yeah.
you see somebody double over like that, grabbing the bottom of their abdomen, and you automatically assume he just got kicked in the groin. So, I mean, credit to was that Tandan in
It
there?
was. It was Dan
Yeah.
Miragliotta.
So credit to Murgliata for going, for making the right call and having the fight keep going and to a very fun and good conclusion. And yeah, I mean, the big problem for Miller was really that he had Cerrone starting slow in exactly the way that Cerrone tends to, and a really slow. I mean, Cerrone looked pretty bad and flat for the first couple minutes of the fight, and Miller tried to kickbox him in that time. He just sat on the outside and tried to just pick at him at range. And when you've got Cerrone on his heels and not fighting smart and not fighting quickly or with pressure, the worst thing to do is to wait on the outside and try to out kickbox him.
Well, Miller did rush in for a couple of takedown
He,
attempts,
he,
and
he, he did, but even then he just got right back up and then went back to the outside and reset. Like he pressured him for that first like minute of the fight, and then he just kind of took his foot off the gas and
I
gave
think that
Cerrone.
those kicks up the middle though can't be. Their knees up the middle
It
actually.
was the knees up the middle that drove him off, but it's
Yeah.
still, I mean, that was where the fight was there to be won if he was going to win it. Was in those first 3 minutes, he had to just be on Cerrone like, ugly on ape, as it were.
and he couldn't do it. I don't know that he could have done it. But let's run through the card real quick. The debut of Claudia Gadelha in the first UFC Women's Strawweight fight did not disappoint. One of two fights to go to decision, but an excellent fight. It got nothing but good reviews. And Tina Litemaki showed a lot of guts, a lot of
Yeah.
grit, pretty outmatched, but was hanging in there and throwing back throughout the fight. What were your thoughts on that one?
Yeah, I mean, I thought Latamaki did a lot better than I thought she would, a lot better than I expected. So I was just happy for that. She was always going to lose this fight. There was no real path to victory for her, and you could see it every time they hooked up in the clinch, and Gadelha would just beast her to the ground and start pounding on her. I mean, there was no avenue by which Latamaki was going to win this fight. So the fact that it went all 3 rounds and some of them were even mildly competitive is a big win for her.
Yeah, and I think a big win for the women's strawweight division. Certainly an exciting start. It's too bad. I mean, I could see why they didn't put it on the Fox broadcast because it was or the FS1 broadcast because it went to decision. But still a bit of a showcase. But then let's move on to the prelim card. Justinas Cedeno beat Jared Sanders. Kind of a fluky fight with the leg injury. Countered a lot of our picks. Because everybody thought Sanders with his wrestling was going to feast on Cedeno, but it did not happen. Any thoughts on that one?
Well, yeah, I mean, that really gets down to more me being happier to see what I expected out of Cedeno in his first UFC fight. Like, I thought that Sanders was going to feast on Cedeno, not because Sanders is, like, this incredible beast of a fighter. I haven't even actually seen any film on Sanders, for as rare as that is. But just because Cedeno looked so bad against Ernest Chavez. He just looked totally unprepared and unable to do what he does well. And what he does well is very high octane, high power, flashy fighting. And and whether or not he can keep that up is still kind of a question, because his big problem is whether or not he can maintain this really flashy, sort of eccentric style round after round after round. And Chavez certainly just pressured him, and after a pretty bad first round, took the next two to take the fight. And so Sanders just, I mean, that right he got hit with early was monstrous. That's what you hope to see out of Cedeno, and it was a great performance for him. Doesn't answer any of his questions, but it was a lot of fun.
Yeah, nice to see him get a win. But bantamweight Aljamain Sterling demolished Hugo Wolverine Viana. I think that answers some questions for Sterling. I saw
Oh yeah.
clear progress, clear development. It looks like third round TKO. Impressive when you keep going that late into the fight and go for the finish in a fight that he pretty clearly had won. Nothing bad to say about Sterling's performance there, and I thought Viana was really gutsy and showed a lot of performance. He just was outclassed and really had no answers.
Yeah, I mean, the thing with Viana, I love watching Viana fight. He's a lot of fun, but he has a style that's like, functionally it'll never work for bantamweight to make him a top tier fighter, because he's a sprawl and brawl guy. And like, he's a good athlete, but he's not like, you know, Eddie Wineland as sprawl and brawl, who just, survived for a long time on being the fastest guy in the cage. Um, and Viana's not the fastest guy in the cage, and so that sprawl and brawl style, it's made to be a gatekeeper. He's made to test guys and say, are you smart enough to not just stand and bang with me in the pocket? Because if you do, I'll hurt you, and if you don't, I'm beatable. And Sterling showed that he showed that he's able to be coached by his expert team in Serra Longo, and to be a great fighter with a lot of different skills. I mean, his kicking game looked evolved. It looked better than it had in the past. He was a lot more consistent with it, and he just hit some beautiful low singles all fight, which Viana was totally unprepared for. And then, yeah, I mean, after he was worn down, broke him. It was great.
Yeah,
Wonderful
really good
performance.
Yeah, good performance from Sterling. Speaking of wonderful performance, women's bantamweight Leslie Smith demolished Jessamine Duke. Just a beating. I was really impressed with Smith. I had not seen that coming. A lot of question marks for Duke after that performance, but hats off for Smith. I don't know that that's a star-making performance, but it got her on the main card broadcast, and just some impressive violence, especially for the women's bantamweight division. I was very impressed.
Well, I mean, that's what got Smith a 125-pound title fight in Invicta for her last fight before she came to the UFC. I mean, when she's on point and when she's trained well for a fight, she's a joy to watch. I mean, she just mixes it up beautifully, throws everything out there. And I mean, she looked better than ever before, honestly, in this fight. She just, the way she was going to the body and to the head and then following up, exiting her combinations with head kicks whenever Duke would try to circle out. I mean, it was just awesome violence, and Smith looked fantastic. And it just goes to show you what a big difference an actual training camp can make in not taking a fight against a top 5 fighter on 3 days' notice.
Yes, indeed. But where does Duke go from here? She's dropped two straight.
Hopefully out of the UFC.
I mean, well, at this point in women's MMA, where do you go? I mean, this is a very green fighter that was kind
Oh,
of
she goes to
rushed.
Invicta. I mean,
Did they have
well,
enough of a division to make a go of it? I mean,
well, they're on Fight Pass. They'll give her fights. They're gonna, I mean, it's not like the UFC only has what 27 women in their bantamweight division. They're hardly cornering the market on. I mean, they have most of the talent because there's not that much top talent for women at 135. But there are a lot of women out there looking for fights, and if Invicta can keep putting on cards, then Duke would be should be great to fill them out. She's only had 5 pro fights, and she started training in what 2012 was when her career started pro.
yeah. So she's very green, and I think could use a lot more seasoning. It's
Yeah.
just frustrating to see somebody with that much reach and height. It's like a female Stefan Struve. Like, where's the jab? Like, she let Leslie Smith
Well,
get
I mean,
inside and just.
how many women can you think of outside of Holly Holm that fight really well at range?
Yeah, it's
Like,
not a lot.
it's not a skill that seems to come naturally to to the training, to the coaching. I mean, I don't know. It's a division most like even the best strikers tend to be infighters. I mean, even Ronda's doing her best work when she's sitting down in the pocket throwing hooks. So I
Yes.
don't expect Duke to ever be a great range fighter. I don't think that'll ever exist.
Yeah, you're probably right. Smith looks great though, and look forward to seeing her next. But then Gleason Tibau versus Pat Healey. This was a really nice fight. One of 2 fights to go to decision, but nice momentum swings. I think Tibau clearly won it early with the takedowns, the wrestling dominance in the first round. But it was nice to see Healey pouring it on in the towards the end of the second and most of the third. But Tibau came back and just won. Where does Pat Healey go from here? This is 4 straight losses. Is he done in the UFC? You think they cut him, or is the roster too bloated and too soft to cut somebody even after 4 straight?
I don't know anymore. I really don't. I mean, I don't know. Their cuts tend to be guys they fire for bad behavior or guys who retire because they don't want to do it anymore. Um, every now and then they'll cut somebody on a huge bad losing streak, and Healy certainly fits that bill, where he'd probably fit right into World Series of Fighting with his style and their divisions. But I don't know. I mean, it's a tough loss. It's kind of what I expected to see. Unfortunately, I mean, partially it's the exact T-Bow fight minus that flurry at the end. I don't know where T-Bow got the idea that he could actually like come back and pour it on late. But this is like classic Gleason T-Bow to just come out and hulk through the first 2 rounds and then be totally spent for the end of the fight.
Yeah, faded late, but he came back there at the end, and that might have made the key difference. And
Yeah.
slick, sweet wrestling from Tebow. I got onto
Yeah.
John Anik on Twitter for saying that was muscle. That was technique. That was taking down Pat Healey. Very excellent wrestling from Tebow. But let's go on to the main card. Featherweights: Lucas Martins, Alex White. Another third round, a knockout. Impressive fight. White looked sloppy, but he came on strong in the second. But Martins finished him off in the third. Just a really nice little fight. I wasn't expecting much from it, but it certainly delivered.
Yeah, I mean, it was one of those fights that some people were like, "Oh, why is this on opening the main event card and all that?" And from the beginning of its placement,
Because violence. That's
yeah,
why.
it's an
Because
obvious
violence.
curtain jerker. It's an obvious curtain jerker. Both these guys are low defense, high output phone booth fighters who love to brawl, and it just turns out that Martins has been he's gone from a guy who was just barely ahead of Jeremy Larson and like the lowest end of the UFC lightweight division, to somebody who's gonna sizably school green fighters, who's really gonna like put a pretty good beating on raw talent.
Yeah, he feasted on some mistakes Alex White was making,
Yeah.
chin up and bad posture, and a very fun fight. But let's move on to what my vote for the fight of the night: John Lineker and Alptekin Oskilic. You've got to eat your words. Oskilic had something for Lineker there. I mean, you have to admit that was, even though he lost and got knocked out in the third round, very impressive performance from Oskilic.
One of my words. Oskilic's striking. Sorry, that's my dog. She's kind of freaking out if you can hear her snorting back there. But Oskilic's striking looked way better than it had at any point in the past. He was able to stick in the pocket and move in and out of range well, throw combinations. Before, he was just winging one-off big overhand punches and moving in and out in straight lines. He looked much better on his feet in this fight. But as I did say in the year before as well, his wrestling was not going to be a big factor in this fight, and it wasn't.
Lineker was able to shut that down, get back on his feet when he needed to, sprawl when he needed to. But just a great fight, though.
Oh, yeah.
And rare that you see somebody go for the bro hug or the high five late in the fight and then go for the kill immediately after. Just viciousness from Lineker, and really a great performance. That's got to win fight of the night or get a performance bonus, whatever they're calling it these days. I think both guys deserve it.
And you know what the really awesome part about that is? Lineker's 24.
Yeah, he's got that.
The dude will be around for another 5 or 6 years to do that. And he's just so much fun to watch. I hope the UFC gets his... I hope they're, like, funneling money into his dietary regimen. And, like, just constantly keeping that on lock, because they should never have a good reason to cut somebody like him.
Yeah, he's very gifted. If he can just make weight, I think eventually he'll outgrow the flyweight division. I mean, at 24... probably in 3 or 4 years, he's going to be just too massive for flyweight and move up to bantamweight. But in the meantime, very fun. It's frustrating that Chris Carriazo is getting the title shot against Demetrius Johnson, but I can't blame the UFC, because I wouldn't bet a title fight on Lineker either. He's had one performance where he comes in on weight. Like, let's let him have 2 or 3, and then he can fight for a title. But he's shown all the signs of a true title contender, and he's one of the few guys out there that Mighty Mouse hasn't beaten yet that's of interest. So that was a fun one. And speaking of fun fights, lightweights, Joe Proctor and Justin Salas. Proctor survived a hematoma that I compared to a portobello mushroom on the side of his head. It was ugly.
Yeah,
and he came back.
He's already got kind of a long, tall face. That really like brought together the sloth comparison from the Goonies. That was that was seriously starting to warp his features there. I mean,
Indeed, but it was a fine fight. I mean, a lot of back and forth. Not necessarily a technical jam, but balls to the wall and a lot of brawl in there.
Yeah, it's just like unfortunately, like I trying to see like what does this do for either fight. I can't imagine like looking at this fight and being like, oh yeah, now I'm really hyped on Joe Proctor. He's gonna kick some ass because.
Well, you're hyped on seeing him again, though.
I'm hyped on watching him fight. He's a lot of fun.
Yeah.
Definitely, he's a lot of fun. But I'm not like that. Wasn't the kind of performance to like really solidify your feeling that he's got like some technical brilliance to put together. He basically
you don't see a contender run out of there, but you can see a sort of Sam Stout esque career.
Yeah, he's an action fighter who's proved himself at this point to be a reliable action fighter and one who wins fights. And that's like the true test of an action fighter, because there are plenty of action fighters out there who just lose all the time. That's we've got enough just blanked on his name.
Chris Lytle was in the booth tonight, so he's one that comes to mind.
But what's his name? Garcias. We've got enough Leonard Garcias.
Yes, plenty of Leonard Garcias. But that brings us to welterweights. Rick Story and Leonard Mafra. Mafra showed flashes in the first round of doing what you had talked about. This is a trap fight. Mafra landed some vicious combos on Story, but Story just walked right through him, took him down, and utterly dominated him on the ground. Got the submission in the second round.
Well, I think
performance from Story.
Yeah, I'm impressed that Story was able to switch that quickly because I don't know that he walked through it so much as that he got hit really hard and realized that he shouldn't fight a stupid stand-up fight.
Yes.
Like, that just seemed to be what it was. Like, oh shit, I got to take this guy down and work this because this isn't like, I don't need to stand in a phone booth with somebody who has no sense of self-preservation whatsoever.
And can fling off combos like that. Like he
Yeah.
cracked Story with a vicious one too. Story didn't have a job concrete would have dropped many a lesser man. But
Yeah, and I assume too that probably, I mean, Mafra's certainly not gone after this fight, but he's probably also headed to lightweight, where he'll be kind of a monstrous lightweight.
yeah, that would be fun to see, and definitely I think the kid earned a third shot. He fought in the UFC 147 before, but has been in exile for a long time. Came in on short notice, gave Rick Story not everything he could handle, but gave him a good fight. Definitely gave him a respectable fight. But Story has moved to a new camp with Ben Henderson in Arizona and looked really good for it. So Story, still a fairly young guy. I think maybe has a title run in him, maybe.
Maybe, I mean, if nothing else, he just looks like he's moved over to crafty vet status. I mean, he's been around for 7 years now, and when a guy's been around as long and had as many fights as he has and had as many fights at a high level, you want to see them exhibit some craft, exhibit that they've evolved somehow, that they know more than they did when they were coming in, and taking a guy down who wants to slug it out with you and subbing him out, that's exactly what I want to see out of Story. I don't know where his ceiling is right now. I hope it's like you say, I hope he has a title run in him. That'd be fun. But if not, I expect him to at least fight smart and fight to his strengths.
Yeah. I think crafty veteran is a well-earned designation for Story. And then lightweights Edson Barboza and Evan Dunham. Again, I was totally wrong about this. It was sort of a wishful thinking pick, but Barboza, Dunham started out to try to disrupt Barboza's range fighting game. I liked his approach, but once he couldn't get the takedown, and he clearly couldn't hurt Barboza standing, and then it was just a matter of time. And the kick to the spleen that dropped him just was a vicious, vicious kick.
Yeah, I mean, once this became a range kickboxing battle, it became just you're counting down minutes. I mean,
Yeah.
and that was what I always confused me when there were people out there telling me that Dunham was like a live dog and oh, he really could have something in this fight. I mean, classically, you look at most of Dunham's fights, and he tends to get stuck on the outside in a kickboxing battle. And the guys he's been able to beat, Gleison Tebow, Nick Lentz, Shamar Bailey, questionably Sean Shirk, are guys that we're not gonna out kickbox him. I mean, none of those names are great kickboxers,
Yep.
So
Yep.
it just didn't. I knew he was gonna spend a lot of time at range, and once he was gonna spend a lot of time at range, this fight had to go that way.
Yeah, Edson Barboza is not somebody you want to hang out with and see if you can beat him at his own game. So painful loss for Evan Dunham, and I'm not sure where he goes from here. His UFC career has got to be in tatters. If you look at his record on Wikipedia, you see a lot of pink and not a lot of green. He's lost 4 out of his last 5, and it's just not a pretty thing. I don't know where he goes from here. And Barboza, I don't know if he can put together a title run, but he's looking good.
I mean, Barboza. People are saying, oh, maybe this will vault him in the top 10. I don't, or like, oh, I want to see him fight a top 10 fighter. I just want to see Barboza in fun fights forever. That's all I care about. Like, I want to see him fight, Adriano Martins. That'd be fun. Or just like, did he, Cruikshank. I want to see him fight Darren Cruikshank.
Yes, the Detroit superstar. That would be a totally fun fight. I think he would feast on Cruikshank.
I don't even care though. Like, I just want to watch him in fun matchups. I don't care if he ever gets the title shot. I don't care if he ever fights another wrestle boxer who can pressure him again in his career. I just want to see him go out there and entertain. That's all I ask.
Yeah, and he's definitely got a gift for that. And it was a lovely performance, and I hope to see more. And that brings us back to the main event. I mean, anything else to add about that main event?
No, I mean Donald Cerrone's gonna do what he's gonna do, and I had my volume down because I was getting everything all set up after the fight. But apparently his post-fight speech was another memorable one in which he immediately asked that any fighter between 145 pounds and 170 get him a fight as soon as possible because he needs the money.
Oh, Donald, that guy
So
needs a financial manager in the worst way. But he's
yeah,
got a 4-fight win streak. His last loss was to Rafael dos Anjos. His loss before that was to Anthony Pettis. I'm looking forward to him. I think he's one, maybe 2 wins away from a title shot. And he's got he got performance of the night 2 times in a row, knockout of the night, and submission of the night. He's got 4 straight bonus fights in a row. That is a pretty damn cool streak. So,
yeah.
you know, no
I mean,
idea what the. Go ahead.
I was gonna say it's really just about what happens with Pettis versus Melendez. I think honestly, and what I mean, how many fights Cerrone takes and wins in the interim, because he will fight every week of every month if he has his way. So, if Cerrone keeps winning in the interim, I would assume that they'll just throw him into the next title shot after Melendez because why not? I mean,
Yeah.
he's a fun fighter. He'd be fun to watch versus Anthony Pettis or versus Gilbert Melendez, and
Yeah, I mean, Pettis destroyed him the last time, and I think Melendez probably would have serious. I would definitely pick Melendez or Pettis over Cerrone, but it's a fun fight,
yeah.
and he's a live dog in both situations, and I think with a couple more wins, definitely will have earned a shot. All right, well, anything else to add about the card? Or
Oh, I mean, it was just so much fun. You
yeah,
know, I
it was.
I had to leave halfway through the White Martins fight, and I said before I left, I was like, I know I'm about to miss an awesome KO, but I gotta go run an errand. Came back, saw the highlight. It was that kind of card. It was the kind of card where you just know that nobody's nobody's hearing the judges tonight at all, and
Yeah.
it's what you
Oh,
want out of a card. It's what you want when you see all these matchups get made. I never like to be when I'm thinking about making picks for a fight or picking a fight and picking a winner. I never want to think about like a whole card where I'm just picking decisions. That's always it's like I don't want to pick that everybody to win by decision. I want to assume that somebody's skill is going to show through to the point that they knock them out or get a submission or do something fun and show off.
yep.
So it
And
was a
that's what we
great
got.
card for that.
It was. My only concern is I don't know how the ratings are going to be. The web traffic was pretty dismal. So, and it seems like that Donald McGregor and his bout on Saturday in Dublin has overshadowed this card, at least in terms of web buzz. So, we'll see what the hangover is and see if FS1 keeps going with these Wednesday night fights. I like the Wednesday night fights. I thought it was fun. But we'll be back. We'll have the Vivisection on Thursday. Tomorrow, Connor and Dallas will be back for the Vivisection tomorrow afternoon, and then Eugene and I will do the Care Don't Care on Friday. So a little bit backwards this time, and then Saturday. I'm not sure if we'll have a 6th round for the Dublin card or not, but I'm counting on you on short notice if we do.
All right. I mean, I think isn't it like an off hours card?
Yeah, it's
So
early afternoon American time. So,
yeah. So if it's early afternoon, I think I can hold that down. We'll see.
all right,
Hopefully, I
awesome.
won't have any. If my social life stays on its usual track, then I'll be there.
All right, we'll count on that. All right, so give us a like on YouTube, subscribe to MMANation.com on YouTube, follow us on Twitter. Zane is at @TheZaneSimon. I'm at KidNate, and read us at BloodyElbow.com. Adios, MMA aficionados. We'll be back later. See you next time.